Join us on the Path Radio Mix online. And to get there, type in thepathradio.com. That's thepathradio.com. And enjoy free streaming music all day long. That's it. thepathradio.com. All right, now let's get to the main show, the Monthly Social Podcast, with me, your host, Guido Perino, as you go on with Guido. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Monthly Social. I am your host, Guido Perino, now streaming in 79 countries and 872 cities around the world. This month in June, I explore good and bad decision making like real estate, hot water tanks, Messi goes MIA, yard maintenance, funerals, and drying your car in the rain. Then I welcome our special music guest, Marc Ferrari from the resurging band Cold Sweat. You may remember him from the hit Hollywood movie Wayne's World, TV shows like Murder, She Wrote, and even soap operas like Guiding Light. He'll tell us about those experiences and his books, including a children's book, as well as his new music and tour. Next, in our self-help segment, we'll catch up with award-winning best-selling author of the new book called The 5-Day Job Search, Annie Margarita Yang, who says she helps young professionals get out of student loan debt while finding the ideal job. I also continue the self-help journey with an opinion look at If You're Flirting with Entitlement. All this, a whole lot more, and wrapped around great music from Cold Sweat. And if you're not a subscriber, I'd love to have you become part of the Monthly Social family. It's free, it's fun, we talk, we learn, and there's something for everyone. So, let's get June rolling. But first, a word from one of our friends of the podcast, Johnny Prosciutto. Johnny Prosciutto, artisanal Italian homemade products. We make it like our grandfather, or as we say, nonno. Naturally cured, old-fashioned, and delicious. Order online at johnnyprosciutto.com, and we deliver right to your front door, where the only thing left for you to do is enjoy it with your friends and family. That's johnnyprosciutto.com. Well, anytime I order from Johnny Prosciutto, I think I'm making a great decision. And in fact, it is, because I really enjoy his product, and he's got fantastic service. And I'm sure that if you reach out to Anthony and say, Anthony, I heard about you on the Monthly Social Podcast, he's going to take care of you. He's going to take care of you anyways, but it's always nice to let him know that his friend Guido recommended his product and services. Now, on the notion of decision-making, it's something that I thought I wanted to explore for this episode because there just seem to be a lot of decisions that either I made or that I've watched people make over the course of the last month since we last talked. And one of the interesting things that's happening is in my area, we have something called No Mow May. And what No Mow May is, you're asked not to maybe cut the grass or not cut it as often because of the bees. They're in a season where they're starting the pollination process, etc. And so we don't want to disrupt them, right? Because we like the bees; they're our friends. But some people have taken this to new levels. Like I've seen some lawns where the weeds in the grass has grown 1.5 feet to my knees, and then you think, well, I know if you're following what No Mow May is, that maybe I kind of get what you want to do, but does it have to be that tall? Like, could you, maybe halfway through mow it? I don't know what the rules are around the bees, but I'm sure that it's not meant for us to grow our grass up to our knees, etc. But that's not really the part of the decision making that maybe I had as much heartburn with as the next part, right? Because you look at it, you go, maybe they're trying to do a good thing, but maybe they're taking advantage of that because they're lazy and they don't want to cut the grass. And then eventually, when they decide to cut the grass, they're using, I watched this one fellow, and he just kept having to restart his lawnmower because the grass was too tall and it would suffocate the engine, right? It would suffocate it. It couldn't keep up with the mowing of the lawn. And then all of the grass clippings were all over the road, all over the sidewalk. And this individual made the poor decision of not cleaning it up. It just became somebody else's responsibility. So I started with a good decision, and then, I've led into maybe what I believe is a bad decision, all right? Another fellow that I saw, and this is a bit of a head shaker. I'd be interested. Is this something that you would do? Flip me an email over at tms@guidoparino.com, all right? And I'll have the address in the show notes. But I saw this one fellow who was outside, and it was raining, and he was trying to dry his car in the rain with a cloth. And so it would rain, and he would try and wipe the car down, and it would keep raining, and he'd wipe another part of the car down. And I thought to myself, he's never going to catch up. He'll never have that car dry in the rain. But he had decided that he wanted to try and dry the car off, or I don't know, make it look nice in the rain. But I guarantee you, as soon as he drove it, maybe 500 meters down the road, it was going to get wet and probably dirty. So then I thought, should I check it out? Is he going to stop every so often and try and dry it off? But I didn't. I made a good decision that I had better things to do. But it was an interesting observation because I was trying to figure out what has made this individual decide that he's going to try and dry his car in the rain. I had a decision to make here at home, or we had a decision to make here at home. Our hot water tank, after 15 years, I think. No, sorry, 10 years. After 10 years, it died. It just wouldn't serve as hot water anymore. And the interesting was, and I said 10 years, it's actually about 2 months past the 10-year period that they recommend that this model of water tank will last you. So we got 2 extra months out of it, but it's pretty bang on when they say, hey, it's going to last this long. So, we talked about it, and it had been one of the traditional water tanks. It fills up, the gas fires up, it warms up the water, and then, you use water, and it stores water, and then eventually, every once in a while, the gas fires up, and it keeps trying to heat this tank of water. And you can run out of it, and then you kind of have to wait for it to fill and for it to warm up the next batch of water, which could be time consuming, and you may not get that hot water, depending if, you have guests or something else is going on in the house. Anyways, we get recommended to us. We call a company and they come in, and I like the company, reputable and all that. So we've used them before for other services, but the company comes in and the salesperson says to us, oh yeah, we recommend tankless. And here's all the reasons why. It doesn't, you're not constantly heating water, you'll save gas, it's on demand, you'll never run out. All things that, truth be told, I had already researched, and we thought these are good reasons to make a decision to maybe move to tankless. And so we do. We move to a tankless water tank, and we love it. It's been fantastic, and all the things that we thought it was going to be, it has been. But now, this is based on my usage and my experience with it, that, if I told you all the different criteria and you met those same criteria, you might have a similar experience, and maybe you would make the same decision. Now, a couple of weeks into having it, it threw some kind of error code. Now, I have no experience with tankless water tanks. So I call the company up and I say, hey, this was late at night. The thing gave us this error code. I'm really not sure what to do. Oh, no problem, sir. We're going to have somebody out to you in the morning. Of course, it's too late right now. They'll be there first thing in the morning. Great, thank you. Next day, we have a service person show up, and the service person, goes downstairs, unplugs something, hits a button, boom, 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 and the error code goes away. And so I say, hey, well, that's great, but why did it do this? And instead of him saying to me, well, it did it because, he looks at me and he says, why would you get this? And I'm not really sure what to answer, right? Why wouldn't you just get a regular tank? I'm like, well, we had one for 10 years, and I try to explain it. And he says to me, bad decision. I'm like, well, why is that? He says, this, it's got a lot of computers, a lot of wires, a lot of things go wrong, but the tank, less goes wrong. And I said, well, I had a lot of problems with the tank for those 10 years. We had all sorts of different issues. No, it's more reliable. I've been doing this for, 39 years. I'm going to retire in 2 years, the fellow says, and I would just go with a regular tank. And so I say to him, I said, well, do you have your home, your size, how many people? Oh, he goes, well, just me, my wife, and sometimes one of our kids. Okay, so he has far less people in the house. And then we talk about the size of the house. Not as big of a house. And, and appliances and how they use it. And so all the things he told me, I might have made a similar decision to him and not gone with a tankless system if I had all the same criteria as he did. So as good as a technician as he was, perhaps, and for the longevity of his career that he had been servicing, hot water tanks and HVACs and all these other sorts of appliances in people's homes, he was trying to apply his experience and his criteria and his situation to mine. And so it wouldn't have been a good decision if I had followed that criteria, if he was giving me that, at the earlier, decision point making. Anyways, I still feel like we made a good decision by going with tankless so far. It's been a really good, reliable, continuous source of hot water when we needed it to be. And, being the personality that I have, that I'd like to, check out detail when I have an opportunity. I don't know that I was always that way, but I've become that way. I started tracking the gas consumption just to see if month to month or week to week I am indeed consuming less. And so far, for the first 20 days, it would appear that I am consuming less. But I'm going to revisit that in the future. So, good decision. Another thing that happened that I thought about decisions was out in Vancouver, the Vancouver Whitecaps, there was some angry fans because they had purchased some tickets, and they purchased those tickets believing that they were going to see, the star soccer player, Messi, show up. And when they found out that he wasn't going to show up, they wanted a refund for their ticket purchases. And some people didn't just have a ticket purchase. They went out and, made arrangements for a hotel and probably some food arrangements and other things. And so they felt that because of the decision that they had made to spend the money to go see Messi and to get their hotel and make all those other arrangements, that if he wasn't going to show up, that they deserved a refund. And it didn't look like they were going to get one. I haven't followed up, but I don't think they did. But they wanted a refund. Now, here's the thing. When you make a purchase like that, somewhere on the ticket or the purchase or the email or the agreement, there's always some kind of line that says, subject to change. And so when something is subject to change, you're making that purchase knowing that you might not see the product or receive the service that you might ultimately be wanting to get for the money that you're paying. But that's a risk. You're making a decision to take that risk. So maybe that wasn't a good decision if you didn't know that you were, assuming that risk, right? What else can I tell you? There was a couple of more things that I had written down here. There was a funny story. I've met a number of people online. And again, if you have a story, please send it over, tms@guidoprino.com. Now, Steph, the Paisan, I met Steph a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago now, I think, on Twitter or now X. And, she posts some funny things sometimes. And we made a connection, I think, because we both have the Italian culture background, right? And she posted something, I believe, that was to the effect that if you ever go to a graveyard, you should, and you step over the grave of anyone, that you should not go home directly, because you may bring the spirit home with you, which would have attached itself to your feet. And she got me thinking that at some point in my life, when I worked at a funeral home, that my mom had said to me, "Don't come home directly from the funeral home." And I said, "Why?" She goes, "You have to stop in somewhere else so that you don't bring the spirit home with you." And so I had to make a decision that I had to stop somewhere and get something. I would stop and usually get a pack of gum, right? Or face the wrath of my mother if she found out that I didn't make that stop and, of course, came home and brought a spirit home. So anyways, that's a little bit of I know it's not fun. Death is not fun, but it was just a little bit of a funny decision point making. And one final, I think, item before we get to the rest of our show when it comes to decision making, and it's around the idea of real estate. And we know that right now the interest rates are quite high. And so if you have property, is it a good time to decide to sell your property? And I'm going to say, in most circumstances, and I don't know your personal circumstance, I mean, if you need the money, if you need to sell the property because you need those funds because you got to move somewhere else, but if you have property that you say, well, I think I'm just going to sell this property, right? Now's probably not a good time to sell the property. If you can hold on to it, it probably makes more sense because, and these are my reasons, right? Look, the interest rate right now is quite high. And so there's a reduction in the number of people in the pool that might be interested in your property or your home, but they're not able to be interested because of the interest rates, right? And so you've got a smaller pool of people looking for properties, right? And so your demand isn't the same. Now, the Bank of Canada is set to reduce the rates, I believe, in June, and it's projected that later in the year, it may happen a couple more times, maybe finding our way back to the lower interest rates as the inflation rate has come down. And I've talked about on other episodes inflation and mortgages with our friends at Butler Mortgage. So check out that episode and how that works, right? So I think if you're looking at it and you don't have an immediate need to liquidate an asset, that right now that would be not a good decision to go and liquidate the asset, and that maybe you should look at the larger picture and the economics of making a decision like that. Well, those are the many examples of the decisions that I had jotted down of things that I thought, I'd like to talk to you guys about it and let you know and let you in on a couple of things that happened there. Of course, again, if you have your own, send me an email, tms@guidoperino.com. Now, I'd like us all to make a great decision and continue listening to the Monthly Social. As I said in the introduction, we've got some great guests, we've got good music, and of course, always more interesting topics to come. Thank you for being with me. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing and joining the folks across 79 countries and the many hundreds of cities that are now streaming the Monthly Social. All right, let's get to the rest of the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Monthly Social Music Spotlight. I am your host, Guido Perino, and with me today is Cold Sweat guitarist, Hollywood screen actor, multi-time author, and film TV producer, Marc Ferrari. Great to have you here, Marc. How are you?
I'm all good in the hood. Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Hey, good in the hood. Me too. Is the hood Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Hey, right on.
I've been here 40 years, believe it or not. This past January was the 40-year anniversary of me moving to Los Angeles from Boston. And I must be stubborn or stupid. I don't know. I'm still here. A lot of folks have left California, but I'm still smitten by its charms.
What are you smitten by? What's the one thing that you love about it?
Well, I'm a huge outdoor guy. I'm always hiking, camping, fishing, backpacking, four-wheeling, just getting outdoors. And where I live in Los Angeles here, literally within 3 hours, you could be up to the mountains, you can be in the desert, you could be at the beach, you could be in the forest. It's an awesome place to be if you're that kind of guy.
Mark, you got to come here. You would love Ontario. You would love Northern Ontario, man. It's everything you described, except we don't have the hot beaches in the sand.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually originally from Western New York, which borders Ontario. Yeah, I'm from the Niagara Falls area. But that's Southern Ontario, right?
Yeah, that's Southern Ontario. Yeah.
Ontario is one of the 2 or 3 largest in terms of square mileage. I know it's huge.
It is. It is incredibly large, indeed. Yeah, Southern Ontario. Yeah, the north and the south they're a little bit different. A lot more pavement down south than there is up north. I'm originally from Sault Ste. Marie, so a lot more trees and a lot more nature up there, right? So, look, Mark, we're going to get into some cold sweat in a bit here, but before I ease into that, there's many different things that you've done in your career, and some of your first notable success was with the rock band Keel.
Sure.
The music, specifically Lay Down the Law, which is Keel's debut album. And that drew interest, if I got this right or wrong, just let me know, from Gene Simmons, which I think he ends up producing the second album and then eventually the third album, which I think is Final Frontier. Is that all right?
That is all correct.
Yeah. Now Gene comes in. How does Gene Simmons end up producing albums for Keel, and what do you remember about that?
Well, he came to us through our record company president, Danny Goldberg. We were signed to Gold Mountain Records. Danny used to work for Kiss's publicity firm. Danny actually also used to run Swan Song Records for Led Zeppelin when he was still in his 20s. So anyways, that was the Gene connection. And Gene, I think he came to one of our shows, but the thing that sold him on us actually was the song The Right to Rock, which we did a rough demo of as we recorded Lay Down the Law. I remember this very distinctly. I was asked to just play something to get a level, get tones, get a level on the guitar or whatever. And I busted into that riff, and the other guys kind of followed me, and we recorded that. And then Ron went and put lyrics to it, did a rough demo, and played it for Gene in his hotel room, and Gene loved it. So,
that's awesome.
Because obviously the lyric is pretty important, and it was definitely one of those anthems of the day, and especially it came out right when the PMRC was starting to rear its ugly head, and The Right to Rock kind of was the pushback.
Right to Rock. Yeah, absolutely. I was wondering and we're going to talk about the members of Cold Sweat later. I spoke with Chris McClernand. He was on the show a few months back, and we got into some Gene Simmons and Kiss talk or whatever. So I was like, I wonder if there's a tie-in back with that in any kind of way too, because he kind of lived in a little bit of a Kiss world there as well for a while, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
We can talk that the original lineup of Cold. You're referring to Cold Gin. That Chris was the bassist. He played the Gene part.
Yes.
In Cold Gin.
Yes.
And that band was sanctioned by Kiss.
That's right.
But actually, the original lineup was me, Tommy Thayer. Chris wasn't even in it. It was me, Tommy Thayer, Jamie St. James, and Anthony.
Wow.
Anthony White from Cold Sweat. So that was the original lineup, and we did 1 or 2 shows without makeup. We just went out with T-shirts and just played Kiss songs. But I know I'm getting off on a tangent here.
No, it's okay.
My memories of Gene Simmons are many, and they're great.
That's
he was really tremendously helpful to Keel, back in the day on a number of different levels. As a producer, he was very helpful in, suggesting arrangement ideas. And, in the studio, it was all about getting good performances and, making sure things were going down to tape correctly. And, he would act as a referee sometimes. Band members had different ideas about things, On the second album, we had a little bit more leeway. Gene was always on the phone. He was always doing something. In the second album, I think he just kind of gave us a little more rope. he was still the producer, but we as the band had a little more leeway to try things that we wanted to try.
I'm just amazed when it comes with G, because it seems like he was all over in like all these different pockets, working with so many different people. Even though he was doing his Kiss thing, he had all these other interests, for lack of a better word, right?
Including acting. I remember we had to
right.
take a break because he had acting gigs, and one time he brought us on as extras. There's a movie out there called Never Too Young to Die.
Oh,
and
yeah.
John Stamos and Vanity are the stars, and Gene's playing a hermaphrodite in there. And so we're in one scene, I think. It was an elevator scene. Maybe rolling back almost 40 years, but Gene always had his hand in a lot of different things, producing, acting, business stuff,
So, Marc, talking about acting and the silver screen, you found your way onto the silver screen as a guitar player in a band called Crucial Taunt in Wayne's World, and then a reprisal in Wayne's World too. How did you get cast into the band for that blockbuster series?
Well, by the way, there's a Canadian tie into this, so I'll get to that too. Well, anyways, that happened through my relationship with Penelope Spheris. I stayed in touch with her. Penelope directed the first Wayne's World movie, but in 1987, she directed a movie called Dudes, which starred John Cryer, Daniel Roebuck. I think Flea was in there. We had the song, we had the lead-off song on the album, the soundtrack album, called Rock and Roll Outlaw. We didn't write that one. It was a Rose Tattoo cover. So we got to do a video with Penelope for that song, and I stayed in touch with her. She was a rock chick. She was managing bands, and she's a rocker. She's not a director who happens to be a metalhead. She's a metalhead who happens to be a director. And so I stayed in touch with her, and initially I had called her to see if I could maybe help her on the music side. Hey, do you need any songs? You need help in the studio? And she goes, no, I got that covered, but I need a guitar player in the band. What are you doing this summer? And I said, I'm doing your movie. That's what I'm doing.
And that was it.
that was how that came to be. It was staying in touch with someone and happened to be at the right place at the right time, I guess. And, I guess I looked the part and all that.
Relationships, right, Marc? Relationships.
Yeah. It does boil down to relationships.
Hey, let me ask you this, just off script, if you will. Were you ever afraid to ask? Like, and what I mean, I mean that in a general way. But were you ever afraid to ask while you were coming through the music or the acting ranks? Were you ever afraid to ask?
Ask for what? Ask for more gigs, or
ask for the opportunity, or put yourself out there, or. Well,
the Wayne's World thing happened, kind of accidentally, kind of fell into my lap. But because of that, then I got asked to, I also appeared in three or four network television shows as a guitar player. I remember doing Murder, She Wrote and Step by Step. And I think there was one other one. I started getting calls from the union, because I was a member of the musician union. You had to be in the movie. And then, all of a sudden the phone started ringing. This director saw you in Wayne's World and thought you'd be okay, be a good choice for the band and the TV
So you didn't have to ask. You just the talent just took care of it, eh?
Yeah, but I never pursued acting. It's I'm not an actor. I'm a guitar player that just looks the part. Did you ever consider it? Like, I mean, you'd done the movies and then you were doing, like you said, Murder, She Wrote, and I think Step by Step. And did you ever start to consider maybe a transition to on-screen career, or? No, not really.
No.
I will tell you, I have a famous, I'm related to a very famous actress actually. And so there's enough acting in my family. I'm first cousins with Jennifer Connelly. So
no way.
My first she's my first cousin. So yeah, I think that there was only room for one actor in the family, and quite honestly, I was busy also building a business back then, and I got into licensing music to TV shows and films and stuff, and so that really took up a lot of my bandwidth. And
so the acting was a bonus.
Yeah, it was kind of just a byproduct, of being a guitar player. Now, there's been some musicians that have made success. Gene Simmons being one. He made that segue, and David Bowie and Sting, and probably a few others I'm missing. Yeah,
but you did some cool stuff, man. You did some really great on-screen stuff. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Marc,
I didn't get bit by the acting bug.
You didn't get bit by it. The band, I had mentioned the band name in Wayne's World, Crucial Taunt.
Yeah.
Did you guys come up with the band name
No,
you didn't?
This is a true story. Mike Myers was friends. One of his best friends from high school had a band called Crucial Taunt. So it's an actual band that existed. And actually, a mutual friend of mine had been in touch with the actual original guitar player for Crucial Taunt from Toronto. So yeah, it was the band name came from a friend of Mike Myers.
Wow! So reality makes its way onto the screen. Did you ever play as Crucial Taunt outside of Wayne's World?
Well, we did the rap party. When we had the party to wrap the film, we actually played. Yeah. Dana Carvey sat in on drums. Dana's a good drummer. Yeah, he'd get behind the drum kit from time to time, on set. Because I think in Wayne's World, there's that little snippet of him playing drums in the in the music store. But no, cool. we didn't play gigs out. We didn't. The only gig we played again was the rap party.
No, I was like, geez, I was scratching my head. I was thinking, I wonder if they did any like shows or tours and kind of, did a spin-off of it. What's your fondest memory? Like, I know it's a while back, of course, Wayne's World. What's your fondest memory of those days on the set?
Well, there were a lot. Wayne's World 2, when the Wayne Stock portion happened. That was 2 or 3 days of hanging out with Aerosmith and Peter Frampton and Chris Farley. It was a riot. I remember that. Because Peter Frampton was actually supposed to be in the film. And, he just got nominated. He's going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame finally, because he should have been in 20 years ago. But he was there for a couple of days, and I think they shot stuff with him. I don't know why they didn't use it. But, being there when Aerosmith, or one of my all-time favorite idols, and hanging out with those guys, just that was a memory.
It's people. You're back to people. Your favorite thing is the people and the relationships. And
the other memory was working with Christopher Walken. One of my favorite.
Oh, no way! Really,
one of the greatest actors of all time. He played the manager in Wayne's World 2, and I actually showed him how to play guitar.
No way.
Yeah.
So so here role reversal here, right? So you're with one of your favorites. Do you fan out on him a little bit, or you just kind of play it cool?
Oh, I had to play it cool with Christopher Walken, man. That guy's as cool as a fucking iceberg.
He is, right? He is. Like, it's not just I've never met him personally, but you look at him, you think not cold, but cool, right? So, but he's really like that, eh?
Yeah, but look, I think the whole thing is you don't geek out with these folks, and they accept you as Padres or whatever,
Yeah. So, look, not long after your Wayne's World movies, and you did your TV appearances, you got into film and TV as a composer and producer for Guiding Light. My mother would love this, and she's going to. She's like, "Oh yeah, right." But during that time, the show wins some Emmy awards. You're honored for your contributions by the Academy of Arts and Sciences. Mm-hmm. How do you transition from Wayne's World rock and roll scene to working a daytime drama, Marc?
Well, that was just one of my many clients. It grew out of again. After my playing days drew to a close, Cold Sweat was over by 1991. 1991 was the year that the Nirvana album came out, and after that, kind of all bets were off for commercial hard rock guys like myself. And I wasn't about to start wearing Doc Martens and plaids and doing heroin. It just wasn't me. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool commercial hard rock guy, 70s guy. But I had to put food on the table. And around that period of time, as one door was closing on me, I started getting some of my demo recordings used in B movies and TV shows. I had friends that were working in the industry, like some of them were like assistant grips or assistant coffee makers or whatever they were, you know, but a couple of them were tasked with like finding music for the bar scene in the film, you know. And way back then in the early 90s, there really wasn't a collection of a music library that had songs. There were music libraries before I started, but most of them were just really cheesy background music that sounded like it was recorded on a drum machine, and you know, a lot of them were. And nobody had songs. Nobody had, you know, a song. If you wanted to license an AC/DC song, forget it. It was going to cost an arm and a leg and take you forever to do it. Or a Van Halen song, or whoever it was. Right. So my idea was, you know what? Forget about it. Forget about licensing, trying to license that stuff. It's not going to happen. But I can create something for you that's generically similar, in the same ballpark, in the same style as AC/DC or Van Halen or, you know, whoever it was they were trying to license, Garth Brooks or Madonna or, you know, some of the rap artists or, you know, Latin artists. Forget it, you know. So I'll create something for you that's in the ballpark, you know, it's not ripping these guys off. And you can have it like next week or whatever, and you can take a decimal point or two off the license fee, you know? And that was my idea. My idea took off like a freaking rocket. And very quickly, I became the go-to guy for a lot of the major studios and, the, you know, TV production companies and Paramount Pictures and Sony Pictures and Warner's. And, you know, these guys would call me up and say, hey, we can't license AC/DC, but we hear that you can create something that's kind of like it, you know? And so for the better part of the next decade, that's what I did. I did have a pickup band called Medicine Wheel during those years, but I didn't play with Keel for 21 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And during that time, I built this business up, and I wound up selling it to Universal in 2007.
Yeah, I think I was gonna ask you about that. So you mentioned something else. You talked about how the music world was transitioning a little bit, and you found your new niche. If that like, you know, and it's funny because I was talking about this with some of the other guys that I've interviewed, how that transition kind of started to happen. If that transition doesn't happen, do you ever do any of that, or you think you're still on course with your, you know, the rock music and, you know?
Well, you know, I wish my playing career went a little longer. You know, I guess I could have put myself out there as a touring guy. You know, I'll be your guitar player for this tour or that tour. You know, I guess I could have done that, but you know, I realized this opportunity very early on. I was on to something. I was on to something really big, and I was really, really focused on, you know, getting that market share early, because I did have competitors. I did have some competitors early on, but I was the first one to make these really solid relationships. And, you know, again, I became the guy to go to.
That's awesome.
By the way, I'm still in that space. All these years later, I'm still producing music for Universal and ESPN and a few other clients here and there, you know?
Yeah. And your company, if I can, was it called Master Source?
Yes.
That was the company. And then you offloaded the company to Universal, but you still have your hand in it.
Well, yes, I'm no longer employed. By the way, I was the division president of Universal Music Publishing for 5 years, you know, and after my employment agreement, I didn't want to renew it after my second term. I just wanted to do something else. But yeah, so I'm no longer employed by Universal, but I'm one of their outside producers. Right. They come to produce me. And I hired a lot of my friends, by the way, throughout the years. A lot of my rock friends contributed to Master Source. My best friend, Tommy Thayer, he and I wrote a lot of stuff together. Bob Kulick, who's sadly passed. Kip Winger, Mark Slaughter, the guys from King's X. Yeah. You know, it just goes on and on and on. I hired my buddies whenever I could, you know?
Yeah, of course. And you know what? You seem to have a knack and understanding for, you know, the business and what was needed. And like I said, you had found your niche in there. Marc, you didn't just stop there. You like, it's pretty wild. You did other stuff. You also moved into authoring a book. You authored a book called Rockstar 101. Yeah, I'm gonna get there. You're good. A Rockstar's Guide to Survival and Success in the Music Business. And that book is approaching its 25th anniversary in a couple of years. How did you decide, well, I'm going to do this book? And when you did it, did you have like indie artists in mind or new artists, or what were you thinking in terms of?
Well, the book was written to be a guide, okay, to kind of be a guide to help up and coming musicians navigate the business end of being in a band, and there's never, prior to my book, there was never a book written about the music industry by a recording artist. Been lots of books written by agents and managers and, lawyers too. Donald Passman's book is considered the Bible. I think that's in its like 10th reprinting, but some of those books are really technical, and they didn't tell the story. They didn't tell the story of a guy that actually started playing in his garage and wound up playing in Madison Square Garden, and what's it like being at that ground level, and how do you choose a manager? How do you choose an agent? How do you choose a publisher? What does this person do? What kind of fees can you expect these guys to take? What kind of business relationships do you need to have amongst yourselves in the band? What kind of perils and pitfalls and potholes can you expect out there? And then I spice it up with some silly road stories. That's stuff that happens to everybody, but that, back then nobody had done that from an artist's point of view. And so many people had asked me, how do I do this? How do I do that? What would you advise me to do? So I decided to write the book on it. That's what I did. So it should be updated, Guido. I will tell you that, because it did come out in 2002. Yeah. And certainly a lot of the digital stuff that's happening these days was not addressed in the book. So it certainly should be updated.
You're one step ahead of me a lot here, because I was going to say, so, social media tools, they've changed the music business a little bit, but, there's a common theme in here that since we started talking tonight on the show, and you talk about people and you talk about relationships, and there's some fundamentals of the music business that maybe haven't changed when it comes to those aspects of it. And in that sense, if I pick up the book, I still have relevancy, right, Marc?
Absolutely. And again, the core of it, of it is about building a team, and what this person does. It's like a cog, it's like a watch. See, when you look at a watch and you see the second hand moving, and it moves pretty slow, right? Yeah. But in the back, all those gears are intermeshing. There's 100 gears doing this, right? And like with a touring band, it's like you've got your manager, you got your business manager, you got your road manager, you got your publicist. Yeah. You got your you got your record company people. Both on the promotion side, the radio side, you got all these gears are working together to try to make that clock move. That's what it's like, So the underlying knowledge, the basic underlying knowledge is still valid. But as I mentioned, a lot has changed since 2002.
Sure. Yeah. Marc, so I work sometimes a lot with indie artists and new indie artists and stuff, and when you think about their journey, and you just mentioned a whole bunch of roles, a lot of indie artists today try to be all those things.
Well, actually, and today there are companies that provide label services to artists. So they've kind of taken, they're like built-in record companies. Yeah. So there are folks that do a lot of those services. Well, not touring services, but certainly promotion and publicity. And again, I don't think radio airplay these days is not as important as it was. You have artists now really that have been discovered solely on the internet, and they market solely on the internet. Right. It's true. Crazy really, you don't need a major label these days as much as you did back in the day. Back in the 80s, it was all about getting on a major label. I mean, there were some successful artists on independent companies back then, but it was all about trying to get that major label deal, and try to get that big advance and try to get that tour support. It was a big machine back then. Everything was bigger back then. The hair was bigger.
The hair was bigger.
Yeah.
The hair was definitely bigger.
Things have certainly changed, it's not as important to have a major label deal anymore.
Yeah, so what we're saying, and what I think they're feeling is, I don't have the funds to go and do that major label thing or to pursue all these different roles, and we do try to do it ourselves. So a book like you wrote can be helpful to help them understand some of the ins and outs of it. And you also said, hey, I wrote another one. You dipped your hand back into the authoring world again in 2016 with a children's book. Don't dilly dally, silly Sally. Now look, that sounds different than music. What brings this to life? What's it about? Who's it for?
Well, that all starts when I become a dad, right? I became a dad in 2002, and very early on, my daughter's actually with me. She's come back from college, so she's in the next room. But very, very early on, it was apparent that she was time challenged. She was very time challenged, and we could never be on time for stuff, no matter how much time we allowed her to get ready for things, and we tried all the tricks in the book, set the clock ahead a couple minutes and tell her we had to leave at 1:30 when we had to leave at 1:45 or whatever, But one day we were, as usual, running late for things and just struggling to get her out the door, and I just happened to blurt out. I said, "Don't dilly-dally, silly Sally." I don't even know where that came from. It just popped out of thin air, And I remember saying, that's interesting. There may be something there. But I was still working full-time for Universal back then and didn't really have time to develop that. And then after I retired from Universal, I circled back to that. By the way, there's been other recording artists that have written children's books. And Billy Joel wrote one. Carly Simon's written a couple. I'm not the only one, but I'm probably one of the few heavy metal guys that have written a children's book, right? So I developed a story, and the story was semi-biographical to things that happened in our family, and it's kind of just a gentle nudge to younger kids about, just being a little bit more cognizant of their time and how they can, how they can use their time more wisely. But I got to tell you something. I've heard from so many adults who bought the book for their time-challenged spouse or their time-challenged older kid, or their time-challenged best friend or the time-challenged whatever, that it resonates with adults too, It's kind of a, maybe a joke for, people buy the book as a kind of a joke for these folks. But because I did a lot of book signings, and I just heard from so many people that, this book is perfect for my husband, or this book is, there you go.
I love it. That's awesome. That's awesome. So look, we've learned a lot so far about the diverse, talented, and articulate Marc Ferrari, but most recently we've learned that fans of your band Cold Sweat, which you're the founder of, can enjoy some previously unreleased new material. Yeah. What leads to the new album titled Unburied Alive?
Well, Cold Sweat was dormant for a long time. Okay. Cold Sweat broke up in 1991. And it didn't end great, to be honest with you. It didn't end pleasant. And for me, it was not the highlight of my career at the time, the way it ended. Cold Sweat it took a lot to get that band going, get it off the ground. We had personnel changes. Very famously, our first singer left us the day we started recording. And so for me, I didn't have the burning desire to resurrect it for a long time. But as you get older, you start mellowing out, and they say time heals all wounds. And in this case, it did, because we had offers to do a cruise or do a gig. And quite frankly, I was the stick in the mud. I wasn't feeling it. But eventually the ice thawed. And in 2020, we got back together and we played on the Monsters of Rock cruise. It was our first time playing in 29 years. I hadn't seen two of the guys in the band in 29 years. Wow. And we had one stinking rehearsal. And we played the pre-cruise party at the Magic Casino in Miami the night before the cruise left. And we had one more show on the cruise, and we killed it. I mean, there's lots of great video on there. up on YouTube of those 2 gigs. And so then the extension of that was, what can we do? What can we do to kind of keep the fire going here a little bit? And so we decided to put together this project, Unburied Alive. It's aptly named because the unburied part is the 4 demo recordings that were recorded back in late 90, early 91. Those 4 songs were buried for the better part of 30 years, right? And the alive part, Unburied Alive, is due to the 2 live recordings that make up the album. There's the show from the 2020 Monsters of Rock cruise. And then as a bonus material, wait, there's more. There is a recording from 1990 when we went over to Germany for the Monsters of Rock Festival. And that particular festival was headlined by Whitesnake that year. It was Whitesnake, Aerosmith, Dio, Poison, Vixen, and Cold Sweat. So that recording is a little rough around the edges. Kind of have to just know going into it that it's pretty rough, but it's better than nothing. And, I know that the fans out there would like to hear anything from the band. So that's the skinny on Unburied Alive. It is available in CD format. There's a great booklet, by the way. So I would encourage folks to buy the CD. Of course, it's also available to stream, where everybody does their streaming. But the booklet's pretty cool. We also unburied some great photos and liner notes.
It's a common theme in our music interview conversations lately that we keep talking about the physical product and the booklets and just engaging, because that's what we used to do. We used to engage with not just the music, but while you're listening to music, you'd flip through the booklet and the story, and you'd kind of do all that. I know you gave us the precipice for the Unburied Alive. Is that a name you came up with when you were doing this, or?
Yeah, I forgot. Maybe it was Chris, our bassist, that landed on that. I'm trying to come up with a band name or a title for an album is always challenging.
Yeah.
There's always these ideas going back and forth. And one of the ones that was suggested was These Go to 11. We're going to put 11 songs on there.
Because there's 11 tracks,
go to
right?
11. I thought that was brilliant, but I got outvoted on that one. So
you expressed some hesitation in reviving this. Were you worried about just getting the guys back together and some of the feelings that how it ended, or?
Yeah, again, for me, it was just, I just have to say it was just what wasn't a highlight of my career. It was a lot of work putting Cold Sweat together, and a lot of twists and turns and a lot of compromises. And for us not to have achieved the level of success I thought we should have achieved, it was just kind of, and then we got sued. After the band broke up, we got sued by another band called Cold Sweat, and I had to dole out some money for that. It was just, oh, come on. Let me just bury this. Let me just bury the horse in the backyard and forget about it,
So reviving it and doing what you're doing, is it easier the second time around?
Well, it's fun. First of all, there's no pressure anymore. And, Cold Sweat was always, even though I started the band, it was always, 5 cooks and no 5 cooks and no waiters. Everybody wanted to be the main chef, and we got 5 very opinionated guys, and that makes for an interesting, musical stew and an interesting personal stew. But now it's all good. We're doing this for fun. We love the camaraderie. We love playing. I always love playing the Cold Sweat songs. They're a bit more blues based than Keel, and a couple of the songs a little bit more melodic. And Keel was more of a metal band towards the end,
Yeah.
So it was always fun for me to play those songs. And looking for, I don't know when this is airing, but we're playing this weekend at the M3 Festival in Maryland.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So we're recording this before your M3 Rock Festival 2024 show appearance, where you're part of just a packed bandstand. It seems that you're celebrating 15 years of rock and roll. there's Queensryche, Lynch Mob, Night Ranger, Striper, Y&T. I did interview Y&T, Faster Pussycat, Pretty Boy Floyd, Sundogs. It just goes on. Quiet Riot, Aldo Nova. So it was interesting for me what you're thinking about the event, what you're expecting for Cold Sweat, and then to see how it materializes. Because by the time this airs, you will have played the show. What are your expectations for the show? What are you looking forward to?
Well,
And when that happens, we can revisit this.
I want to continue our winning streak because we've had, in addition to the Monsters of Rock cruise in 2020, we also played the Monsters on the Mountain Festival in Tennessee back in 2022. We had a really good show there too. So I want us to continue our winning streak. It's challenging because we don't rehearse. We literally, when we go in for M3 here, we'll get together in a hotel room and just kind of talk about the gig, maybe acoustically play it, but it's not, we don't rehearse. And then in this case, this will be a pretty good sized crowd, probably our biggest crowd to date. I think they usually get 10, 15,000 people at this thing, So that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm expecting. I mean, everybody in the band, always brings their A game. And we're looking forward to just the hang. It's always a good hang, with all these bands. I'm a fan of a lot of the bands on the bill. You mentioned Y&T. I think Dave Manichetti is probably one of the most underrated musical talents of our generation. That guy is a monster player, monster singer, monster writer. Yeah. I can't say enough great things about him, And
I had caught up with Aaron Lee. Aaron Lee was on the show, and we talked about Dave as well. So yeah.
Striper, by the way,
right.
A little bit of trivia here. Striper was the first band on the bill on the very first Keel show. It was 40 years ago, a few weeks ago, April 7th. Perkins Palace. It was Striper, Max Havoc, Witch, and Keel. So Striper was the first band on the first show I ever played with Keel. And I maintained a friendship with those guys all these years. Michael Sweet, actually, he sang on the first demo that I did after I left Keel. He sang backup vocals, and Oz is a wonderful guy. And, we're all friends, so they're a monster band.
It's amazing that music, over the years, it just binds, right? The music, it binds, and there's a camaraderie there. And we go through different arcs, right? Different points in our lives, different stages, like you talked about. We go through different arcs for it. The lineup for Cold Sweat right now is, of course, yourself. I think you mentioned Anthony White. He's on drums. Eric Gammons on guitar. Roy Cathy vocals. And then our friend Chris McLarnon, who was on our show last July. So you're going through this and you're doing these things. You guys are together. You're having fun. Do you think we're going to get new material above and beyond this, or are we even looking that far?
Well, I would like to think so. It's, on one hand, technology allows, people to collaborate all over the world. Our bass player lives in South Carolina. Our singer lives in North Carolina. Our drummer lives in Vegas, and me and Eric are here in SoCal. Technology does allow us to do a recording, put all the pieces together. So I would like to think there's some, we're going to get through the Unburied Alive thing first, get through this cycle and, kind of see where things land. But you never know. And we're lucky we have all 5 original guys left because, as you know, a lot of these bands don't have the entire original lineup. I think in the case of Y&T, it's just Dave. Yeah. Unfortunately, his other 3 bandmates have passed. Yeah. So we're lucky we got all 5.
Well, we're going to look forward to that, and if you make it happen. But we are going to enjoy Unburied Alive right now, and all that Cold Sweat is doing. Look, with all that you've done, Marc, music, TV, movies, books, everything else. What do you think your greatest accomplishment is? What do you consider it to be?
Well, I guess most people would if they're a loving parent, I would think that my greatest accomplishment is being a great dad and raising a great child. you got to put that first. This other stuff it's nice. It's nice to have some accolades and everything, but to raise another human being into a fully functional, well-behaved human being is that's an accomplishment. And anybody who's gone through parenthood will probably tell you there's some tough spots in there, but the reward certainly is greater than anything you could ask for.
We keep our kids alive, Marc. We keep our kids alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's a pretty big thing to hear.
It's tough to pick one thing. The other thing I'm proud of is that I got through the 80s without. First of all, I'm a rarity because I don't have a single tattoo or piercing or anything, and that's pretty rare for an 80s guy. And I made it through that decade. Alive, without any trauma or drama, So I guess that's another thing I'm grateful for,
No, that's right on. Thank you for sharing that. Look, you've got your website, marcferrari.com, and I believe Cold Sweat promotes Facebook as their go-to. Yes. And I had a chuckle, not a chuckle because you mentioned the lawsuit, but facebook.com/the real Cold Sweat is the Facebook link, right? Now that you got that out of the way. Are there other sites where you want fans to engage you or pick your music up? And I know you talked about getting the physical copy of the record. What's the best place to do all that stuff?
Well, Ron, by the way, the Cold Sweat album is being released on Ron Keel's little label, RFK Media. So in terms of buying the physical product, I think that's probably a good place to go, rfkmedia.com or ronkeel.com. There'll be a link there. But really, marcferrari.com has got everything related to me up there. A lot of the TV interviews I did for promoting the book and a lot of the stuff related to Pantera up there, some old pictures. Of course, you guys probably know my history with Pantera. Yeah. And, marcferrari.com is a good place to waste a little time.
Waste a little time. Okay, so we'll go with that. And for Cold Sweat, Facebook we'll include that link, and then we'll get the link for the buying the thing off of the Ron Keel media site there as well. Man, Marc, look, it's been a real honor to have you on the show. Extreme honor. Thank you so much for your time and for doing this and for sharing your journey with us. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with? I know you got to get going, so before you do that.
Well, I'm very grateful for the hard rock community to still have an interest in our band and to keep supporting other bands from the genre. It's really important. And look, I don't think you've heard the last of me or Cold Sweat or hopefully Keel too, because this is Keel's 40th anniversary. 40 years of us forming the band, and soon will be the 40-year anniversary of the Late on the Law album coming out, and then January 2025 will be the 40-year anniversary of The Right to Rock, which is a pretty important record, of the time. So yeah, I'm planning on being around for a long time. So you got to put up with me for a little while longer.
No, looking for maybe we'll get some cool vinyls out of those anniversaries coming out, eh? Maybe.
Yeah, some of the Keel stuff was released on vinyl. The Streets of Rock and Roll, and I think Keel 6 Back in Action was released on vinyl a couple of years ago. An Italian label did that for us. So, but I'm a big vinyl guy too. I mean, I started on vinyl. Don't forget, man. I'm an old fart, So it was vinyl and 8-track tapes back in my day.
You know what?
Cassettes, and then came CDs, and then came streaming.
Yeah. So. I had a few 8 tracks. Yeah, I had a few 8 tracks and vinyl, and then of course the tapes, and we all know, right, Marc? So that is the extraordinary and talented Marc Ferrari sharing his words, art, stories, and music as he reprises his band Cold Sweat. So you don't need to be waiting in vain, and you'll need less than a fistful of money while you jump the gun and get love struck, grabbing your own copy of the new album, Unburied Alive. So don't let it be a crying shame. No, grab your claim to fame and you'll be singing Let's Make Love Tonight. I will have Marc's Cold Sweat links in the show notes. Thanks for doing this with us, Marc. Wishing you and the band the best. I hope you'll be back again in the future. And good luck.
All right, party on.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that segment with Marc Ferrari of Cold Sweat. Let's listen to some Cold Sweat music. Here's a song, and I'm going to let Marc introduce it. Take it away.
This one right here is called Crying Shame.
track. Stay tuned for more music from Cold Sweat a little bit later on in the show. Now, let's get to our next segment, our self-help segment. Here is Annie Margarita Yang with the 5-Day Job Search. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the monthly social self-help spotlight. I'm your host, Guido Perino, and joining me today is Annie Margarita Yang, author of an award-winning, best-selling new book called The 5-Day Job Search, which she says helps young professionals get out of student loan debt while finding the ideal job. Welcome to the show, Annie. How are you?
Guido, thanks for having me on. I'm doing great.
You say my name fantastic, Annie.
Well, of course, because I Googled it.
So I got to tell you something, though. I when we were setting this up and I started preparing myself to have you on the show, I'm a little bit nervous because of the product that you wrote. I feel like I'm interviewing the interview specialist on here. And I'm like, man, are you going to keep score on me and evaluate my questions by the end of it or anything?
Absolutely not. No, you're not the first one. I actually had a host say, I was actually very intimidated to reach out to you. And then I asked for what? I'm actually honored to be on your show.
Wonderful.
I'm honored. I'm thankful that you're giving me the platform to speak to your audience.
Oh, I think they're gonna enjoy, hearing about your books. There's some foreshadowing there. We're gonna learn about more than just the one book. So, but I gotta ask this too. I understand you make your home base in Boston. Now, did you grow up Boston, or is that where you decided to live?
I'm actually originally from New York City. And then I got married to my husband, who then moved to Texas. We had a long-distance relationship for about 6 months, and then I moved to Texas to be with him. We lived there for a year because, he lived there for 1 year. 2 years. I was there for 1 year because of that long-distance period. And he was doing his master's. And then now he's doing his PhD in Boston University. So that's why I'm in Boston. I kind of just follow him.
Wow.
But he'll be finishing next year. And I'm going to put my foot down and say, I want to stay in Boston because I love it here.
Oh, wow. I was going to say to you, New York, down to Texas, and back over to Boston. What was going to be your favorite? But it sounds like Boston's your favorite?
Boston is my favorite. I mean, it's got both city life and suburban life. And you drive a bit more, you've got rural, right? Versus New York City, you drive 1 hour, you're still in New York City.
But we love you, New York. We still love you. We love you lots, New York. Do you follow any sports in Boston?
Oh, no, I don't know anything about sports in Boston.
No sports.
No
okay,
sports.
Now, if people must ask you this, have you been to the Cheers bar in Boston?
I've never even heard of it.
Cheers,
Cheers?
That's okay, it's okay. It was a sitcom, Cheers. And they have a Boston, the bar is based in Boston, and it's a real bar. And it's got the sign, and you go down the steps, and you're going to have to check it out.
I have to check it out, yes.
Yeah. It was very popular show. I'm also dating myself a little bit, so.
Maybe, but I'm also a workaholic, and workaholics tend not to watch TV.
I understand.
I think I watch maybe 4 Netflix movies, not even TV shows, movies a year. So
no Netflix. You're too busy writing books. Okay. Look, but before we get to the book stuff, one more thing, because I always end up having a music featured guest on the show. But I also understand that you play music. You play piano.
That's right.
What kind of
Am I considered a musician?
Are you?
Oh, no, I've only been learning for 2 years. So when I started learning, and then I went to Italy with my teacher, and then she started introducing me to other people that she knew. Yeah. And then people would ask, oh, Annie, are you a musician? And then I was kind of like, how do I answer that question? Am I a musician if I'm just learning how to play music? Or do they mean are you a professional musician? Do you get paid to do music? I wasn't sure. It's a hobby for me right now. But hopefully I become professional.
That's a good word because I play guitar and I do talk to a lot of musicians who have it as a career. And when they, when they say, "Oh, you play guitar," and I say, "Yes, I'm a music hobbyist," because it's not my career, it's not my profession, and I'm probably not as good as them. So I consider myself just a music hobbyist. But that's good. 2 years, that's great. I bet you in 5 years you're going to probably write a book on how to learn piano in 5 simple ways.
Yeah. I actually think so. It's my goal to write, what was it? I'm going to buy the website 5minutepiano.com. I'm going to do that. Yeah. And then I'm going to write a book with my piano teacher on how to solve your piano problems in 5 minutes.
I am looking forward to having you back so we can talk about that. Annie, you're pretty open about identifying yourself as a millennial as you engage your readers. Why is it important for you to distinguish yourself as a millennial as opposed to, say, a Gen Xer?
Because I myself am a millennial. I'm born in 1995. Yeah. So Gen X, I think those people are like over 40 years old, right? I don't think people would relate if I was the financial advisor or financial guru for Gen X, especially these days, because millennials are the ones complaining that they have it hard. They can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford to get married and have kids. Or if they do get married and have kids, now they already have to start saving up for their kids' college tuition. Gen X is kind of like the forgotten generation because they're between the baby boomer and the millennials. Yeah. So everyone knows about the baby boomers and how good they have it. And then Gen X is just like quiet,
I wouldn't know anything about those Gen Xers, nothing at all. So look, if you're not a millennial or Gen Z or Gen X, will the book still provide some help to you?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Because this advice works for everyone. I actually, when they say like to succeed in business, you need to pick a niche. So I was just kind of like, okay, it's for millennials and Gen Z who just finished college, right? But actually it is for everyone, surprisingly, because I helped somebody who was 70 years old land a job. Yeah. So it really is for all age ranges.
No, that's good. It's good to know, right? But we recognize that you're identifying with the millennials, but anybody could benefit from the information that you put here. Now, we are going to talk about your new book, The 5-Day Job Search, in a few moments. But before this book, you also authored another. It was called 1,001 Ways to Save Money. Now, are the two books linked in any way? Do we need to read the first one before we read the new one, or should we?
No. You don't need to read the first one. The first one is just a gigantic listicle. So it's basically like a reference Bible that you can literally pick it up, flip to any page, and you can start reading because it's a list, right? But the way it's linked to the second book is in the second book, I talk about how I don't have an accounting degree, but I land accounting jobs in 5 days. So how do I manage to do that? And one of the things that I did is I wrote 1,001 Ways to Save Money. So in my first job search to become a staff accountant, I put in my resume right below the bachelor's degree in communications, I put author of 1,001 Ways to Save Money. And I was getting so many phone calls for interviews, and I was going in and I was kind of just like, aren't I unqualified to be here? I don't really understand why you called me in. I just thought I might put in my application, but I'm not sure why I'm here, right? And people were saying, oh, it's because you're an author, and we've never met an author. Is this legit? Is this a real book? I said, yeah, and then that's amazing. So that's how they're related.
So they found something amazing. But that's a good linkage. That's a good linkage. And that first book, is that all from personal experience?
Yes. Actually, a lot of it is from my own personal experience because I earned a minimum wage for several years. Right. And so I wanted to learn how to save money. I was earning like between $8 and $10 an hour. And I was told by my guidance counselor that I would always be a failure in life and that I would never be capable of making more than a McDonald's wage. Wow. So because she said that, I was like, well, if I can't make more money, maybe I could save my way to wealth, save my way to $100,000 or something. Who knows? Like that was my mindset. I didn't know better. So yeah, every day for years, I would read about how to save money. And then in the end, I was just like, I know so much. Why don't I just write a book?
That's a great guidance counselor, by the way. And I'm being very sarcastic, but
It's terrible.
yeah, it indeed, right? Like, wow, I can't believe that advice. Have you ever run into the guidance counselor or kept in touch, or have they?
Well, so she told me the reason why we had all this drama is because I didn't want to go straight to college. I saw people when I was in high school, it was in 2012 and 2013, junior and senior year. I read stories in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times about how people were finishing college with $26,000 in student loan debt, and 50% of them were unemployed or underemployed. And I was like, I don't want that to be me. How do I avoid that? Well, I just won't go. I'll just go straight into working, right? That was how I thought. And my guidance counselor, she was just like, well, if you don't go to college, you'll always be a failure for the rest of your life. And this is going to be the number one regret you'll always have. And then 2 years later, I had already moved out of my parents' house. I was working full time for $10 an hour. Yeah. Never asked them for money ever after that. But like I had a boyfriend who was very manipulative, abusive. He went to jail. And at that point, the same week that he went to jail, there was a customer in the store where I worked. She was a multimillionaire, self-made multimillionaire. And for some reason, she was interested in me. She kind of just like looked at me and she's just like, you're very smart and talented. I want you to work for me. And so I went to a meeting with her for an interview. Yeah. She didn't give me the job, but she was just like, why don't you have a college degree? And then I was explaining to her my life story. And then she told me, you need to go to community college. And then after that, you go to Harvard. And then I was just like, okay, well, since she's successful, I'll follow her advice, right? So then I did apply to community college, but to get into community college, so I was accepted, but then the school was like, we need your high school transcript. Well, to get my high school transcript, I had to go through my high school guidance counselor. Oh. So I went back into her office at 20 years old for that transcript. And then she's like, oh, so you decide to go to college now, huh? I told you I was right. And then I was just kind of like, I didn't like that interaction. That was my last interaction with her.
It went a little full circle, but hey, it's working out. It's working out. Can you give us a couple of samplers on how to save money without sacrificing the things that make life enjoyable?
Oh my gosh. So the number one thing I recommend is already to just start tracking your money, track what you spend your money on. I have found that when people do this, they automatically start cutting back for some reason. It's just an awareness exercise, but because they're more aware, they're like, oh my gosh, I have to record that. I don't want Annie to see that. So then they suddenly just don't spend it. Tracking works. Then after you track, you have to make a budget, right? And then after you make the budget, you have to start looking for ways to cut. So you kind of just have to say, I have to cut this subscription, cut that. Well, maybe I should stop eating out so much. Maybe I can save money by baking my own bread instead of buying bread from the grocery store. Who knows? Like you kind of just have to like look at your own situation. And that's why I wrote the book 1001 Ways, because everyone's situation is different.
And some of those things just seem quite logical. It's just accepting the logic and then acting on the logic. It's funny you brought up cutting things out. A number of years ago, I went to a seminar that talked about if you're ready to buy a home or not. And there was all different people there, different couples, and the worker would go through your own situation and try to help you recognize through a set of questions what you were spending your money on. And there was a couple there that realized that if they stopped buying coffee at Starbucks, they would actually have money to make a mortgage payment. That's how much coffee they were drinking at Starbucks. So I always remember that because I was like, wow, that's pretty incredible. That's a lot of coffee. And just that self-awareness.
They were doing it every day or twice a day?
Many times a day. And they didn't even realize it. Like that moment when they did it, they kind of looked at each other and went, we didn't even realize we were spending this much money on Starbucks, because they weren't tracking their spending habits.
Wow.
So I think you're onto something with the Ways to Save Money book. So we'll put that in the show notes so that they have access to that as well. Now, after the first book, you get motivated to go from money advice to job advice.
That was fairly recent, actually. So after that first book, I ended up working at Domino's Pizza for $7.25 an hour. Wow. Because of where I was in Texas, there was no job opportunities. So for a whole year, I earned like between $7 and $13 an hour. I worked 5 jobs. And then it was after I moved to Boston, I said, oh, I have a new life here. And that's when I started applying to accounting jobs. So from then on, I thought, okay, my career is going to be mainly accounting. I like accounting. It's like an extension of my personal finance life, just applied to business on a larger scale, right? It's the same thing. I like to penny pinch for a business owner. And I like to call people out when they're trying to rip us off, right? And then it actually wasn't until last year I wrote this book. Yeah, last year. And people were getting laid off. Yeah, there's lots of like really brilliant people, very smart, well-educated, highly capable people who are actually, I think, have more potential than me. But for some reason, I keep seeing over and over again that I'm the one given opportunity and not other people. And I kind of like wondered why. And I realized it's not about being smart. It's more like about your character, right? Little things like having integrity. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. A 7:30 appointment means you show up at 7:30, not 7:05, 7:35. Like it's, these little tiny things like, I guess even like having a great attitude. So I would go into work and I would say, great morning, everyone. And I would come in and everyone would look at me. Good morning. Ew. Why is she talking to me? Kind of like thing. Ew. Why she think the morning is so great? So it's these little things about me that I think that employers like. So I thought about this and I just put it together into a book because I think a lot of people need it right now.
So you've said a couple of terms in your descriptions as we've been talking. You've used the word job and you've used the word career. Do you distinguish between job and career?
Yeah. So I think of actually, I go beyond that. I think there's 3 parts. There's the job, and then there's the career, and then there's the calling, right? So the calling is actually the higher version. It's the highest version. It's the biggest umbrella. It's like, it doesn't matter how you go about doing it. It's just the end goal that you're trying to reach. It's the end vision, the end result, the meaning, the purpose, right? That's the calling. Like, for example, if my calling is to help people with their finances, well, that's very generic and broad. I can help people with their finances so many ways. I can sell them insurance products. Maybe I can become a financial advisor, like a certified one, and then manage their investment portfolio. Maybe I could be like Dave Ramsey. I go on a radio and I start like lecturing people about their money. Like there's just so many things, so many avenues that you can pursue. That's the calling, right? It all falls under the calling. Then there's the career, right? The career is the actual like arch, right? Arc or arch, I don't know the difference. Oh my gosh. Whoops, embarrassing. But like it's like the long term of your career. It's like I think it's more like it goes beyond the title, honestly, right? But like for example, my career coach, maybe, I don't know, accountant. There's so many things, right? And then the job, I think, is honestly it's just the title. It's just the title. There's nothing more to it. But beyond that, the job, you can have a job and no career because you could be stuck in a dead-end job.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you could be like me. I was working at Domino's Pizza. My title was insider, meaning I was inside answering phones and making pizzas, or delivery driver, meaning all you do is you deliver pizzas. Right. But at the same time, that could also be a career, because I have coworkers who are now general managers of the store. Right. Or you could become area manager or regional manager, or you could end up becoming a franchise owner. I know the person who owned our franchise store, he owned 7 of them in the same city. Oh. Right? He was a very rich man. Yeah. So that was his career. He started at the very bottom, just like me. Yeah. He was an insider. Right.
Cool. I like the terms. Those are interesting terms, insiders. And I really like the calling. I'd never heard of that term, but it makes sense the way you've described it. And I imagine we would learn more as we read your book. When you put a book like this together and you said, hey, this is fairly new. I've worked on it last year. It's come out. How do you stay on task to write something like this? Like what process do you go through? And, do you ever find yourself going off the road going, that's it, I can't, or what's the process? Or just out of curiosity, and how long did it really take you to put together? Did it all flow out once you started, or?
It took me 10 days to write the rough manuscript.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was a 10-hour process because it was 1 hour per chapter. Initially, it was supposed to be a 10-chapter book, but then I decided, let me divide it into 3 parts and then into 50 chapters.
Wow.
So, yeah. But initially, it was just like straight up 10 chapters. I dictated each chapter into my phone. So I just turned on the recording app and then I dictated it. And then I used AI to transcribe it. And then I said, okay, this is my manuscript. But it still needed cleaning up because AI isn't like perfect. And the way I speak isn't grammatically correct. So I still had to go through the manuscript and start editing it to be good enough to pass to an editor. Right? So I did that for a month. And then I gave that to an editor. She finished that in a month. So the whole manuscript was finished in like 3 months, basically. The whole thing was
That's pretty
done.
incredible. That's an interesting process. And probably something different. I would have never thought, just speaking it and then transcribing it later. I'm thinking traditionalist. You sit there on your typewriter and no typewriter.
Yeah, no, you don't need to do that.
I'm just kidding. Annie, what did you find one of your biggest challenges in pulling it all together to be?
It was the cover because, yes, surprisingly, it's not the writing part, it's the cover because I want to design something that's like dummies, like the Dummies series.
Yeah.
Dummies for Windows 10 for dummies or like Windows XP for dummies. So
wow.
So like how the books are highly recognizable. You go to the library or the bookstore and then just looking at the spine, you're like, yeah, I know that's a dummies book.
Yeah.
I was kind of like thinking, I want something like that, but for Annie Yang Financial, I want to write like a whole set of financial books, and then I want to eventually hire other people to be under my umbrella. So like things that I don't understand, like I don't understand insurance. I want to go to an insurance professional and tell them I want to co-author a book with you. Right, so you get some of the proceeds of the sales from the book, but have it be under my umbrella. So then, because like people trust me, so if it's under the Annie Yang Financial umbrella, just like a dummies brand, then they'll buy it just because it's under Annie Yang Financial. But I wanted it to be like highly recognizable, and I wanted a design that you could like just easily swap out. I don't want like a $900 custom-made cover every time I write a book because that's how much it costs to design a cover, like $900. So we spent like a whole 3 months just to create a template, which is, what you see there, that you can just swap out the title, swap out the author name, just swap out the text, honestly. And then the cover can be done in 1 hour. Yeah.
That's it. That's very well thought out. And, it sounds like you really gave a lot of thought to your brand and short and long term, Annie. So that's pretty cool. And I did like the cover. Interestingly enough, it's simple, but it's inviting. Like it's like, oh yeah, like I know exactly what I'm going to get here, right?
Yeah, and it's like gigantic.
It is gigantic, right?
Yeah, because what I noticed is on Amazon Kindle, the bestseller list, if you look at it on your phone, the picture of the cover is like the size of my thumbnail here. And if the text isn't like blown up, you can't see the title of the book. Yeah.
Look, you say that in 5 days, anyone who reads the book will receive responses from companies within 24 hours, receive written job offers in 90% of instances, secure a job with a $25K to $35K raise compared to someone's current salary. That sounds impressive in some cases, people are going to be like, that's too good to be true. How do those things happen when they read your book? What do they have to do?
There's a whole bunch of things they have to do, and it's going to take more than 5 days to become that kind of person. So you're into self-help. You know, you understand it's about who you become, right? So you have to become the kind of person that's worthy of getting a job in 5 days. So it takes a long time to get to the point where you're so used to showing up on time for everything that's just who you are. Right. Or like you say, you know what, I'm going to wake up tomorrow at 9 and I'm going to go for a run. And you kind of just do it. There's no drama. You have that kind of self-discipline. That takes a long time to develop, the self-discipline. So it's like a whole set of things. I ask people to learn public speaking over the course of 10 months. Once you've done public speaking for 10 months, you've done 10 speeches, and you're able to answer questions that anyone can throw at you, like on the spot without hesitating and with confidence, that skill stays with you for the rest of your life. But the price of that is 10 months, you know? So just a whole bunch of different sub-skills under a job search category that I tell people to learn, like things like learning how to type fast, learning how to type 90 words a minute, right? The average person, I think, types like 42 words a minute. So learning to type 2 times as fast as a normal person. Little things like this, they all add up. And then at that point, you become the kind of person that's worthy of the 5-day job search.
Yeah. So you have to invest in yourself, right? Like we talk about this in different aspects of our lives. And this one here, you just have to invest in yourself as a starting point. And then you could take advantage of some of the outputs and the advice that you're giving. Look, I on other advice you're giving, I know you offer some resume advice, and people dread writing resumes. What are a couple of things that you expand on in your book when it comes to resume advice?
Actually, I do follow the standard advice, which is to list your accomplishments. But after I wrote the book and I started helping people with their resumes, I kind of realized that people don't even know what their accomplishments are. They don't even know. So a good rule of thumb to follow is to use numbers, something that's measurable. So you led a team of people. How many people did you lead? You had meetings with people? How many meetings a week did you have, right? So it gets people a good idea of the kind of work you did. You had to clean cages at the animal shelter. How many cages at the animal shelter did you have to clean every week? You know, like things like that. She was a VP of sales. Surprisingly, you think a VP of sales would have a lot more confidence in herself. She was like, I don't know if I have any accomplishments. And then I asked her, okay, how much revenue did the company earn before you worked there? Like 900,000. And then I asked her how much, you were there for 9 months. How much did it grow? And then she gave a number, and then I did the math. I was like, you increased the revenue by 15%. She's like, yeah. And then I was like, wow, that's amazing. She's like, really? Yeah, that is amazing. That needs to be on the resume, right? So,
Right.
Some people, they don't know. Maybe they need to ask a friend, what do you think of this that I did?
No, that's good. So a big tip here is understanding your accomplishments, but then quantifying them as well. One of your chapters is also about cultivating courage to face fears. In your experience, what are some of the fears people need to overcome in seeking their career endeavors?
Oh my gosh, I think peer pressure is a big one. There's a lot of pressure from parents wanting to please their parents. My own husband faces this. He's in anthropology and he likes philosophy, so he's really into social sciences, the arts, and he's expressed in the past that he feels bad that he's not going into something more tangible like science and engineering like all the other Asians do. He doesn't need to, right? I financially support the two of us, but he feels like he has to because his parents would be more proud or something like that. Yeah. Pleasing the guidance counselor, pleasing your teachers. I had a teacher tell me, wow, you should not be doing finance. You're so smart. You should be doing academia. You should be getting a master's degree. I was like, no, I don't want to get a master's degree. So it's really that pressure. And then the second one, when having to face their challenges with courage, is the imposter syndrome. When somebody tells you you're not qualified, and you kind of have to learn how to tune it out and go like, thanks for your opinion.
Right.
Thank you. But I don't value your opinion, and then like just move on, right? Like even today, I still get people telling me I'm not qualified. I still do. Just 2 months ago, a podcast host told me, "Who are you to give people branding advice? Unless you've helped at least 100 people build their own brand, either as a business or like their own personal brand, you're not qualified. You're not an expert to give branding advice. You can't help people. What? You're the only testimonial? You're the only success story? You're not qualified to be on my show." What? Yeah.
Well, I won't comment about another person's show, but there's probably some questions you could have asked in return. No, those are interesting. And you brought in a couple of different components there. You brought in culture as one of the components, as you overcome your fears, etc. So, and that's important. I understand, like different cultures, different expectations in terms of your career and being able to move forward. And it's funny, you brought up branding. And we talked about branding at the beginning of our talk here. You talk about personal branding to help yourself stand out in the job market. And some folks say, just follow the rules, don't push the branding envelope, right? Because it makes you look like you're not willing to conform to the standards. And myself, I've always sort of pushed the envelope when it comes to branding. I've always said, you know what, I want to do something different. If I hand in my resume, I just don't want it to be a bunch of, block letters on the page. I want to give it character. I want it to reflect who I am. I want them to look at it and say, that looks different. I want to look at the one that looks different, right? So it just doesn't blend in. But what would you say to folks who give that advice that say, you know what, don't look too different because you'll stand out for all the wrong reasons. Just conform to the standards and go with the content.
Yeah, you're never gonna get very far if you're not willing to have people say no or reject you, hate you. You're not gonna get far at all because people who are very successful in their field, they have lovers and haters. For some reason, I never really understood this. Why is it I'm so polarizing? Why do people either extremely love me or extremely hate me? There's nothing neutral about me when people meet me. And I've just come to realize that's just how it is. When you put yourself out there, you have to come to terms with that.
Yeah. Identify your brand and accept whatever comes, criticism or, admiration for whatever your brand is. Look at talking about branding. And so I'm thinking what you're saying is, do something different, build your brand out. Does everyone need a personal website, Annie, as part of their branding?
I think so. I think it's the new resume. I think people are so behind the times. It used to be that you had a resume that you had to apply in person. You either mailed it in, applied in person, you faxed it. Right now, you email the resume. And then now you have a LinkedIn on top of the resume. If they like your resume, then they might check out your LinkedIn. That's what a lot of recruiters said. When I had a resume but no LinkedIn, they were like, where's your LinkedIn? We want your LinkedIn. And I was like, why are you so obsessed with finding out my LinkedIn? Goddamn. And then I guess the next step forward in that, as we progress more through technology, and advance, is you need to have a website. That might be the new standard. That's the bare minimum.
It's interesting. Listen, you brought up LinkedIn. I think in the beginning, I was like, oh yeah, LinkedIn. I'm not a big fan of LinkedIn. I prefer a personal website if you could have it. I just find LinkedIn it confines you to certain structures and people will look at, oh, well, what's your connections here and your connections there? And I don't want them to look at somebody else. I want them to look at me, right? And the website allows you to look at me Are you still a fan of LinkedIn, or is it?
Oh yeah, I kind of like started off with like, why do I have to be on LinkedIn? I don't want to
Right.
showcase anything. But I see the usefulness of LinkedIn. Like if
Yeah.
I see somebody and then I'm like, wait, you know that person? Can you introduce me to that person? Right? Like,
Professional networking.
I like
Yeah.
that. And then also finding out who works somewhere. Like let's say I want to code email somebody within a organization, right, a company, but you can't find very much information on their website. Where do you go? You go to LinkedIn. It has all of the job titles. I am earning affiliate marketing, right, from AI headshots. I made a whole series on AI headshots. I'm earning affiliate marketing, and I earned this company some money, and I was thinking, oh wait, they need to pay me. I thought payments were on a monthly basis. Why didn't my first payment come? I emailed support, emailed support, emailed support. Kind of like kept going into a black hole for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I was like, why is no one responding to me? Finally, I was just like, I'm going to put a face to this, you know? I'm going to find someone who can help me. And go on LinkedIn. I find out the person who's in charge of marketing. I thought, okay, maybe this person's it. She got the answer for me within 24 hours.
Wow.
Right? So it's helpful.
So it's a tool. It's a tool, and you make a choice, I guess, if you're going to use that tool. You also talk about telling your unique story in the book. Can you help us understand that better? What's your unique story about?
I think you start off with where you were in life, right? A lot of people, they don't want to hear about all the success that you've had. People want to hear like that struggle, right? These days, I think it's very common to think of, I don't really like it, but your identity, right? So I would like to say, okay, I'm a millennial, woman, Asian American. So the main struggles of that is like, wow, I have all three of those minority statuses. I must be a victim or something like that. I don't know. People, for some reason, think to victimize that. But I don't make it about the struggle or the victimization here or the oppression and things like that. I say, okay, this is what I am, but this is my story. This is where I want to go. This is where I want to do with my life. This is all the things I want to accomplish. This is the direction I'm heading. And are we heading in the same direction? Can I work together with you? You know? So think about that. That's really important because that inspires people. Like I had somebody, he came to me. He was an accountant. He was laid off and unemployed for about 5 months. And he read my book and he was just like, how does an accountant, like, how do you get an accounting degree with, with no accounting degree, but become an accountant? So he reached out to me personally for help because he's like, well, this accountant can help me, right? He was obsessive over certifications. Every coaching session that we had, he said, but Annie, what accounting certifications do I need to stand out? And he kept asking, and what if they ask me why I've been unemployed for 5 months? And then I was just like, dude, you write your own story. You write the story of your life. You write your future. I said, if they ask you why you've been unemployed, you can just say, I've been laid off, but I spent the last 5 months learning, studying for this exam, and this is where I'm going. And then he goes, but then what if they ask me why I don't have a lot of experience in tax? And then you kind of just say again. I said, you just say the same thing again in different words. But this is where I'm going. I'm going to become a tax expert, right? Like you just say that over and over again in different ways, with confidence.
Redirecting, reinforcing your message, reinforcing your story of what you're going to become. Good advice, Annie. Look, you also, in your book, you talk about mastering fearless salary negotiation. What do you mean by that? And is that something we should be doing every time?
Yeah, I think people leave money on the table when they don't negotiate the salary. The first thing is people don't understand pay bands. So within a certain title, let's say there's a range for a title. Let's say for a staff accountant, the range is 45,000 to 60,000. Where along that do you fall? You don't necessarily know, right? Yeah. But like that, there's a reason why sometimes a manager makes less than the person they're managing. Is because you can fall on the low end of the range for a manager, and then the person they're managing is on the high end. They're capped in their earning potential, but the manager has more potential to grow and earn money, right? So once you understand that, that will help. And then the next thing is to never be the one to give the first number, because if you give the first number, your number might be lower than the number they were planning to offer you. And you will always get exactly what you ask for in life. If you don't ask, you don't get, right?
So if let's play this out. So let's say they say to you, so what are you expecting to make in this position?
I'm expecting to make the equivalent of the value that you believe I will bring to your company.
Man, that's a good answer.
Oh yeah, I say it in the book to just keep repeating that.
So you're still but you're throwing it back and you're saying, you know what, you're going to give me that first number. I'm not going to give you that first number.
What do you believe?
Yeah. Why do you think
the value I'll bring?
Why do you think people are afraid to negotiate the salary? Is it just like, oh my God, I got a job, like they're going to offer me a job? Like what is it? What's the fear in talking salary, do you think?
Probably that they think if they're asking maybe too much or beyond what's normal for this industry, then maybe they don't really know what they're doing. Like they don't really understand. But that's why I say, or at least that's been my experience. Like I didn't understand pay bands, pay ranges and stuff like that. Once I understood that, I was like, oh, there are industry averages. They're not just pulled out of thin air. Once I realized that, and I was like, well, you can actually research that. Right? And then you can actually find out where along that scale that you fit in. Like if you don't have a lot of experience, then you fit in the lower end, right? If you have a lot of experience, you're in the higher end. If you have some experience, you're just competent, but you could be even better, you kind of fall in the middle. So once you find out the band and where you fit, you can find out that information and then you can ask it with confidence. That's why.
Annie, as you went on this writing journey and you've shared so many experiences with us already and so many insights, some freebies, if you will, for folks, were there any memorable moments that happened, whether they're personal or professional, that in any way changed your direction in the book or the path of advice that you were going to give folks?
No, I think the book was written so quickly that there was no change in direction. But I could say how I've changed from writing the book. Prior to writing the book, I myself had imposter syndrome. I questioned, why are people giving me an opportunity to do accounting without the degree? I'm not a real accountant. I'm a fake accountant. And when are they going to find out that maybe someday I'm going to make a huge mistake on their $1 million project, and then maybe they might sue me if their reports are inaccurate. Like that was a kind of like a back of my mind fear. And I was like, when are they going to really find out, you know? And it never happened. And then after I wrote the book, I came to realize I do know what I'm doing. And I myself need to have a lot more confidence. So when I finished it, I published it, I started working on that confidence, and slowly every day I build up my own confidence. Like I recently just started cold emailing colleges and universities. So I've been emailing the librarians. I have a list of 7,000 schools. Wow. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to cold email all of these librarians and ask if I could donate my book and have it in their collection to be made available for students. And I wasn't really sure what the response would be, but 10% come back to my cold email response, like we would love to have your book. So I've come to realize, wow, maybe the key to having everything I want in life was simply to ask for it.
Just ask and go for it, right? Because if you don't ask, they won't know. Right?
Yeah, it's that simple. Maybe that's the key.
Yeah.
Maybe I've been making it so complicated my whole life all along.
Yeah. And so look, and we at the beginning of our chat, again, I'm going to go back and I asked you, do you follow sports in any kind of way? And you said, no, not really into sports. But Wayne Gretzky, do you know who Wayne Gretzky is?
No.
So Wayne Gretzky is a famous Canadian hockey player. And you're going to relate to this, I think, right? Because one of the pieces of advice that he gave, when he talked about playing hockey, was that he guarantees you that you're going to miss 100% of the shots that you never take. And that's what Annie just told me. That she just said to me right now. You said, look, if you don't ask, you're not going to get anything. But if you ask, at least you took a shot. You took a shot at it, right? So as you brought, the millennials and the Z's along, I'm trying to relate it to our hockey heroes and stuff like that. The hockey market out there, folks who are going to read this book, that they could relate to Wayne Gretzky, who's a great, all the greatest Canadian hockey player, if not the greatest hockey player of all time. Just a little sports fun there, Annie. Look, you also said something else too. I said to you, the title of the book, 5-Day Job Search. Can I do this in 5 days? You said, look, you got to invest, Guido. You have to invest in different parts of this so that you can do this. Why do you call it the 5-Day Job Search then? Because
people like instant gratification, and I know that. It's kind of, am I going to say the 5-year job search? People were telling me that. My friends are like, we read the whole book, Annie, and it's a lot of work that you're asking people to do, and it's really going to take 5 years to become that kind of person. So why don't you call it like how to become a 5-day job search candidate in 5 years? And then I was just like, who's going to pick up a book and buy that? It's kind of like Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Work Week. Wow, such a sexy title, right? And then you open the book, you read it, and then he lays out the whole process on how you can have the 4-hour work week. And it turns out you have to spend a lot of time learning different ways to automate and delegate, all these different things. And then the reviews are like, this book is a scam.
But we're not. You're being upfront. You're actually telling everybody, look, it is a 5-day job search, but you have to invest to get to where you need to be for it to be the 5-day job search. You have to, we started out by saying this is a self-help segment, and you're going to have to go through a process of self-help so that you can get to that 5-day job search. Where's the best place for us to grab a copy of the book?
The best way is by heading over to AnnieYangFinancial.com. That's ANNIEYANG Financial.com. And the audiobook is actually free. So if you go on AnnieYangFinancial.com, you click on audiobook at the top, and then you just put in your name, your email address, and then you can download it for free.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, thank you, Annie. Thank you for giving us more insights on your new book, The 5-Day Job Search, getting us excited about how we can use it to potentially improve our own lives. Is there anything else that you would like to leave us with before you get going?
Yeah, I just want to say go big or go home. I tell everybody this. It's just kind of like how I'm going to reach out to 7,000 schools. The more you reach out to people, the more, in this instance, then the more jobs you apply to. I tell people to apply to 50 jobs a day.
Wow.
Then the higher the chance that you get the offer that you're looking for.
Helping us with our calling, that is Annie Margarita Yang, who is more than a finance guru. She's a lifeline for millennials navigating a rigged system, a no-fluff YouTube personality with over 1 million views. She's also the best-selling author of 2 books, The 5-Day Job Search and 1,001 Ways to Save Money. I will have Annie's website, AnnieYangFinancial.com, in the show notes, as well as a link to her books. Thank you, Annie. I do hope to see you again, and wishing you continued success. Take care.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that segment with Annie on the 5-Day Job Search and, of course, saving money and more. Speaking of more, let's get a little bit more Cold Sweat. Let them introduce their next song. Here you go, Cold Sweat.
This right here is called Let's Make Love Tonight. Just
special music guest, Marc Ferrari and the band Cold Sweat. Let's make love tonight. Stay tuned. We have one more song from Cold Sweat to end the show off. Now, let's get to our next segment. Are you flirting with entitlement?
Are you flirting with entitlement? Have you noticed an increase in the sense of entitlement in daily engagements? It's not your imagination. Statistics demonstrate a rising trend in entitlement that is believed to be influenced by factors including societal values, cultural values, and rising individualism. A study from the University of Hampshire reported that young people scored 25% higher than those aged 40 to 60 and 50% higher than those over that age. That report and several others warn that entitlement breeds resentment, and resentment increases entitlement, along with cycles of disappointment, anger, negativity, and a constant need for an individual to convince themselves that they are special. How do you know if you're flirting with entitlement? What concerns should you have? And how do you change for the better? Recognizing some symptoms of entitlement may be a good starting point in your journey to understand it and overcome it. Here are 5 signs that might indicate a sense of entitlement. 1. A self-absorbed view of the world. Having little regard or empathy for your impact on others. For example, imagine if you're frequently late for meetings and despite knowing that your tardiness disrupts the schedule and wastes others' time, you make no effort to change your behavior while possibly justifying your lateness with excuses without considering how your actions affect others. 2. Uncompromising attitude. Demonstrating a lack of understanding of others' needs in social situations. For example, imagine if you insist on playing loud music late at night in a shared living space. Despite your awareness that your neighbor might be disturbed by the noise, you continue to play your loud music, dismissing any request to lower the volume because you believe you have the right to enjoy your music in your own space. Your own desires and rights are prioritized over the needs and comfort of others. 3. Double standards. Showing inflexibility to the request of others while making unrealistic demands, at times oblivious that your personal happiness comes at the expense of others. For example, consider a situation where your friend always chooses the movie, restaurant, or activity without considering your preferences. They may argue that they're better than you at deciding and disregard your requests for a more equal approach. They may not realize that their insistence on having their way could be affecting your enjoyment of the friendship. 4. Need for special treatment. Believing that you deserve special treatment such that there is an expectation of receiving preferential treatment and special favors in life without regard for why you should be treated specially. For example, imagine if you frequently dine at a busy restaurant and your expectation is that you are seated immediately upon arrival without a reservation. You also believe that you should always receive the best table and complimentary items because you are a regular customer, and when you don't, you become upset and start complaining to the staff while disregarding the restaurant's policies or needs of other customers. It's a mindset that expects preferential treatment as a given rather than something to be earned. 5. High demands. Believing that regardless of what you have in your life, that you deserve more. For example, your comfortable home, steady employment, and the company of good family and friends still leaves you dissatisfied and wanting a bigger house, higher paying job, and more successful family and friends as you constantly compare yourself to others, feeling shortchanged or like you're missing out. These are only a few signs of entitlement that you should consider in your self-evaluation. If you exhibit one or more of the signs of entitlement, that could lead to serious challenges in your life. Some of those challenges can manifest themselves in your personal and professional life as pitfalls, like 1. Relationship conflict, where you may disregard the feelings and needs of others, leading to misunderstandings and disagreements. 2, unhappiness, where you feel unhappy because you feel you're not getting what you deserve, and the constant dissatisfaction can lead to a persistent feeling of unhappiness. 3, disappointment and depression, where frustration sets in when your expectations are not met. Over time, the constant feeling of disappointment and unhappiness can lead to depression. 4, poor work ethic and damage to professional relationships. You may experience a lack of accountability at work with a diminished willingness to collaborate. You may also lack team spirit at work and avoid problem solving in the workplace. Your decisions become more self-serving, which can become apparent to coworkers. 5, mental and emotional damage. You may develop an unrealistic belief in being inherently deserving without proportional effort or consideration for others. Some of the pitfalls of entitlement are serious enough to consider seeking help from a mental health professional, as they highlight the importance of recognizing and addressing entitlement tendencies for personal growth and healthy relationships. Another area that can be helpful in overcoming entitlement is understanding the factors that may contribute to your sense of entitlement. For example, consider these 5. 1, environment. This includes societal and cultural factors that you are exposed to as you mature. 2, parenting. The way your parents have treated you plays a role in your entitlement development. For example, if your parents solved all your problems, it may have shielded you from consequences, which led to a sense of entitlement. 3, authority figures. If you have received special treatment from an authority figure, it may trigger a belief that you deserve such treatment in all aspects of your life. 4, narcissistic personality. Entitlement is an NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, and certain personality disorders, like an NPD, may lead to a sense of entitlement. 5, media influences. Messages from various media sources can also contribute to your sense of entitlement. If the entitlement discovery journey has led you to better understand the characteristics, pitfalls, and factors contributing to entitlement, you may also want to explore opportunities to overcome any sense of entitlement. Here are 5 strategies that may help. 1, recognize the feeling of entitlement. Recognize and acknowledge your feelings of entitlement. Reflect on your behavior and/or attitudes and identify instances where you may have expected special treatment or had unreasonable demands. 2, develop self-awareness. Being in tune with what you think, feel, and do can help you understand your entitlement tendencies and how they impact your relationships. 3, practice perspective taking and show compassion. Take some time to understand someone else's perspective. This may help you better empathize with others and understand that everyone has their own needs and wants. It may also help you connect with people on a deeper level, which can reduce your feelings of entitlement. 4, use cognitive restructuring. Challenge your tendencies by considering alternative evidence and others' perspectives, as it may help you develop a more balanced viewpoint. 5, let it go. Learn to accept that you can't control everything and that it is acceptable to let it go. You may discover greater peace and a more content life. So, the next time someone cuts you off in traffic and then flips you off, or someone takes your place in a grocery store line, or even demonstrates a need for special treatment, recognize that you may be dealing with someone who is struggling with entitlement. If that someone is you, then please consider seeking some professional help. Overcoming entitlement requires effort and commitment, like in any other instance where you're trying to make an improvement. It also requires you to go through a process. Sometimes it's best to get help from a professional, and if the task seems too much to take on by yourself, a mental health professional can help. This is an opinion article by me, Guido Prino, of the Monthly Social Podcast. If you prefer to reference the written form of this segment, you can go to guidoprino.com/blog and access it there. Thank you.
Well, there you go. Did you catch any of the signs of entitlement? And are you flirting with entitlement? Maybe you are. Look, there's a lot of that going on in the world right now, and there's a lot of news headlines and social media headlines where we have some really good examples of that. But I want to end the show on a high note, and so I'm not going to get into what is some of the bad examples that I've experienced of entitlement from some folks out there. Look, thank you for being here on the show. Thank you to my guests, especially thank you to you, the listeners who come and give us the opportunity and your time. And I do hope, and the guests hope, that you continue to come back. And maybe you can do that by subscribing, and so that you do become part of the Monthly Social family. Happy to have you here around here long term. Of course, if you're looking for sports, because sometimes I do a sports segment, please go to thecoachescall.com. And of course, if you're looking for other music videos and music interviews, there is the Path Radio Spotlight on YouTube. If you just go to youtube.com/@ the Path Radio Mix, there's a whole bunch of great music content there as well. All right, let's take this episode through June and then into July. Let's close things out. Stay safe out there. Enjoy your June. And here is Cold Sweat with Rain Down.